Welcome to Brandon Hall Group's HCMx Radio, the only podcast in the HCM arena that weaves current market research, HR technology, and industry leaders into each episode. Our HCMx Radio host is our Chief Operating Officer and Principal HCM Analyst, Rachel Cooke.
Hi, this is Rachel Cooke with Brandon Hall Group. I'm the COO and host of our HCMx Radio podcast. I'm excited to have with me today as our guest speaker, Asha Pandey, who is the founder and chief learning strategist at EI Design. She heads up the organization's solution architecting and innovation mandates. Asha brings in her experience of 18 years to help EI Design customers transform their learning and keep pace with the changing workplace dynamics. She also heads up their newly launched learning consulting practice. In addition to leading their learning strategies, Asha is a regular writer for various global learning forums. And today we're going to talk about one of her recent ebooks she wrote this year about e-learning trends in 2021. The trends is to help realign remote workforce training strategy in the post-pandemic world. As you've seen from Brandon Hall Group, we've done a lot of research as well last year and ongoing to understand what is happening within corporations, how they are addressing the challenges and what they are doing to be sustainable and to help their organizations move forward in such an unprecedented and challenging time that in history that any of us have ever seen. And so why I'm so excited to have with us today Asha, because she's very passionate about what she has done at EI Design. She's done a tremendous amount of work with her clients and has had such a great impact. And so I'm excited for her to share what she sees are trends and that are effective for companies to help continue to move forward. And before we talk about the ebook, I want to warmly welcome Asha. Welcome.
Thanks so much, Rachel. A pleasure to be with you here today.
And pleasure to have you. And just kind of shared a little bit of your background. You know, it'd be great. Can you tell us a little bit more about your journey and particularly how did you become a learning professional?
Sure. So I trained to be an engineer, and electrical engineer at that. And but I think I always had the spirit of being an entrepreneur as the top priority. And of the 34 years that I've been working, 28 plus years I've been an entrepreneur. So I've had the luxury of pursuing my dreams and doing things that I truly care about, I'm passionate about. And as a learning professional, close to about 2 decades of experience, Rachel, and the journey began from the other side, which was from the LMS side. And very quickly, I realized that content is king, and ability to really bring in the learning transformation is going to hold the key for success. And so from there, I transitioned to what is now EI Design. And our focus has been on learning designs which excite the learners, which create a value for the business, and create an environment that learners want to come back for more. So that's about me. Personally, 30 plus years, married to my best friend, still going strong. I have a daughter. She's in college now.
Lovely. That's so nice. We have a daughter. She's not yet in college, but her son, he's 17, and so he's got a little bit more time here with us, and then we have a third. So it's, I think you see so much through your children and you learn all over again. And so, I think why I fell in love with the learning industry, and I think I'm going on 20 years now being in the industry in some capacity. And, it is continuous learning, and that's what makes it so fascinating, and to have that curiosity and to be able to help people. And so, and I know you've done a lot this year. So tell us a little bit about your book and, what is how has your ebook helped your clients understand the trends and how to effectively create and deliver learning during this time?
Sure. So the ebook on trends for e-learning is something that I've done for a while now. This happens to be my 8th in the series. And Rachel, every year what I try to do is that bring in a difference. I mean, if you Google, you're still going to get the same trends listed, but it shouldn't end there. How do you truly use and leverage them? And every year, from the time I started writing these trends, I've seen that has been a reason for me to focus on. And specifically last year, of course, it was the pandemic. And of course, we saw the way it resets the workplace dynamics. We saw how it created an expanded and a fairly different role for the L&D organizations. And with the remote learners, there were also very specific expectations that the organizations needed to address. So yes, the ebook is aligned to ensure that people have a sort of a guide which they can use as they probably reimagine or reevaluate the possibilities in 2021. But more significantly, Rachel, I think it is something that I've drawn upon my practical experiences during the 2020. So is what we saw, there were two very distinct flavors in the last year. So there was this April, May, June, immediately after the pandemic hit the world, was when we saw some people saying that, okay, we'll probably deprioritize the training, we'll see how it goes. Some people who, of course, had a large digital learning practice were obviously able to scale the way it needed to. Then there were a lot of organizations who just converted the instructor-led programs, whether they were 3 hours or 3 days, straight into virtual instructor-led programs. And obviously, there were different levels of success associated. But very interestingly, what we started seeing from July was people began to take a step back, that now that realization that we need to look at a more sustainable and a longer term solution, right? So this is where the discussions with the customers began. And there were, I think, 3 or 4 key areas that we worked with our customers in. So there was this change management, both to handle the remote learner expectations, as well as a lot of organizations had the upskilling of the trainers to be able to handle the virtual instructor-led sessions. Then we had the challenges of en masse remote learning also meant that a lot of the strategies needed to be redefined to truly engage and connect the remote learners. Very specifically, going beyond the LMSs to learning within the flow of work, right? And over and above, whatever was being done in the first quarter after the pandemic underwent a scrutiny, re-examine, and re-evaluate that what would work better. So I think we successfully worked with our customers in this transformation. And a lot of this learning is what I've put into the ebook. So it's very topical, it's very relevant, and it's very, very real.
Absolutely. And what we've seen, there's been always talk about how learning is evolving and how much of it should be virtual or what is the right mix. And companies or technologies have been really pushing for this transformation. And some companies have been more pioneers in being able to move ahead more and be more agile. And some companies have been unsure. So this year kind of really pushed everybody, whether you were ready or not. This is here we are, and there's no coming back anytime soon. At least we don't see it in what we're predicting either. So I think your ebook right now is very relevant and very timely. And let's talk about some of those trends that you've identified. And I think there are 5 e-learning trends that you broke out and have described what they are and why they're so important for the learning organization. Can you give us a little bit, I know we could spend an enormous amount of time on each and every one of them, but what are some of the key takeaways from these trends, and what should learning and really, anyone in the workplace be thinking about?
Absolutely. So what I did basically is that it does cover 19 trends to be specific, but as I mentioned, that their relevance, the way they need to be used in today's context, and as you rightly said, we need to be agile. We need to have more iterative approaches. We need to have framework where, if things don't quite work out, you should be able to quickly replace it with something else, and assess how well things are going. So essentially what I did was that I mapped them into 5 tracks. So the first track begins with what I call are the trends in the spotlight. These are, Rachel, your must-haves. Given the virtual environments, the remote learning, you're going to need mobile learning, whether it is for completely self-paced online learning or to support your virtual trainings, right? A close cousin of mobile learning, which I believe should be what people should be betting on, are the mobile apps for learning, because they come with the added advantage of giving the flexibility to personalize, crafting learning journeys, and keeping the information right, absolutely updated and current. Then related to, again, these 2 formats, we shouldn't forget the virtualization of the instructor-led sessions, whether the ILT moving to VILT, or given the duration of your core program, probably it will be a blended mode that would make sense. And maybe sometimes it's a journey where you move from ILT to VILT, blended, or maybe fully online, depending on the dynamics, right? And besides this, I think there's a new trend that I added this year, which I didn't have in all these years, which is I believe that the remote working and the flexibility that it offers would also help us expand the workforce and include people with special needs. So I've actually added a 4th one, which is on integrating the accessibility guidelines into your online training to be able to ensure that we have a more inclusive learning environment for people with different backgrounds. I also believe, which is not a trend, is that we're going to see more women into the workforce with the flexibility that this new environment offers. So that's the first track. The second track is basically a set of trends which help people learn well remotely, be able to apply what they have learned. And I think more specifically, which is emerging, is that not everything should be on LMS, but on demand and within their workflow, right? So learning in the flow of work. So this is where we have trends like micro-learning, which of course, is the sharp, focused, action-oriented, bite-sized learning. Ability to then build up from there into personalization. So that's the second trend right here. And then these bunch of just-in-time learning aids, the whether you call them job aids or learning aids, or otherwise known as the performance support tools. So these fall into the category of learning, application, and learning exactly at the time of need. The third trend, which I think is very important when we are talking to largely remote workforce, which is the ability to engage them continuously. And the continuous learning means that you need to have informal learning, you need to have probably curated, including user-generated content. You're going to have room for social or collaborative learning and nudges for self-directed learning as well. And the 4th track is the bunch of strategies that you can use. So they range from the gamification, not just for fully self-paced learning, but we're seeing its usage really accelerate in the VLT sessions, bringing that engagement. And so that's one trend. Then the more classic approaches like your scenarios or interactive stories, or moving up to video-based learning, including interactive videos. You definitely have the AR, VR, which again, in the context of micro-learning, is beginning to find finally the spot under the sun. Otherwise, it was too expensive to integrate. And last one, which I think is the most interesting option, which is what I call as the next-gen strategies, which sort of combine many of these trends into a solution which works very optimally. And you remember we talked about agility, room for maneuvering things, room for optimizing things, room for sometimes fixing what didn't quite deliver the value that we had sought, right? And I wrap it up with the trends which allow you to measure how well things panned out, and is there room for further iterations till you hit the bullseye. And this is where you have your LXPs, you have your learner analytics, and the emerging AI for learning. So there are 19 of them, but they are logically grouped. And I think as you're reimagining your strategies in 2021, you would find insights supporting each of these trends. So actually, I've used a lot of stuff from Brandon Hall, your research, your insights to substantiate the trends, the patterns, and why it is a compelling reason, why you should probably invest on it. So I've done that too.
And I feel that that learning professionals across different industries, when we talk to them, it doesn't feel as daunting to them. I don't know if it's something about this year, people have had the time, even though it's been a very challenging and I just don't even know how to describe it in a few words of what people had gone through, and whether it's personal or professional or just kind of the uncertainty of what's to come next. People have I feel like, very positive outlook on how they can support and help their people develop and also help their companies grow. Don't you find that to be true? Don't you feel that people have, even though this is probably, and if I can reflect back at even a couple of years ago when I talked to learning professionals, I feel like they have always felt overwhelmed at times, and they maybe struggled with what to prioritize, and how to give that rich, robust blend of that blended experience. And right now, I think they are more narrowly focused on what they can do and what resources that they have. It seems as if, not saying that people are not stressed, I didn't say that. It just seems that people have a little bit of a positive, and I was going to ask you, before we wrap up today, what, if you can sum it up, is there anything that stands out to you, or what you predict 2021 is going to look like? And I won't hold you to it, okay? So anything is possible in 2021.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think in a way, I think when we will look back at 2020 with all the odds and the uncertainty, et cetera, I think for a lot of us, it was a year of realization that a life outside of the way we thought it needed to be was practically possible. So I saw this at a personal level, and you rightly said that we saw it even when people were looking at the training delivery, right? So there were newer possibilities, and yes, there was a bit of a knee-jerk reaction, obviously when it hit us in March, but very quickly we saw the people were reevaluating, and there was clear focus on, if we could do this in this much of time, we can actually go many levels beyond, right? So one of the things that stands probably the tallest, if I were to look back, is the fact, I think it taught us that you could all work remotely, which meant that you could also create an environment from learning perspective where this was practically possible. You did not need a lot of mandated measures, or whatever. And so that to me was I think the biggest part of the what I saw as the significant change. And very quickly, I think what you said is right, that people didn't see it as a challenge, but as an opportunity to see what more now was possible. So if we look at what has transpired, I think it marks a clear shift from highly discrete trainings, which were pushed, to learning journeys where people will pull the resources, right? So I think that is already done. Now, to be able to sustain this, the focus is going to be on continuous learning. And before we are able to get to that point, I think there are a lot of supporting measures which are necessary, whether to change people's habits in the way they learn, making sure that the learning is available within their workflow, rather than, every time you got to log on to an LMS and pull something out. So I think I would see the world moving towards a more structured, a bigger holistic picture of what we call as the learning and the performance support ecosystem, where the learner is at the center and the focus is always on continuous learning, which means all the budgets need not go to just formal training. You need to have room for the other modes through which people learn, whether it is social or informal, of course, components of experiential elements that need to be there. But more importantly, when majority of your learners are going to be remote, don't start the training program. First, I think we need to show them the value, the relevance, the awareness, the context setting before we get into this. And even after successful completion of the program, there has to be a connect. And eventually, there should be always a methodology through which we ascertain what's working, what's not. And which is why ecosystem is a circle, it's a cycle, right? And you feed those inputs back into the system. So I see it as a realm of continuous improvement. Definitely, I see it a place of more continuous learning. I do believe that we're going to see more learner-centric. I mean, not to use it as a cliche, but truly where we are designing things that people really want and which they can pull. It is continuous. It's more personalized. So I think it has reset many boundaries as well, right? And for an organization like us, Rachel, we are based out of India, and we service 26 countries. That's where our customers reside. And a lot of our customers who would have favored a nearshore or an onshore partner suddenly realize that if there is value, you should talk to that partner. It doesn't necessarily you need to be limited by people who are in the physical proximity or closer to your organization's office, right? So I think many changes, and I do re-examine my trends in July. So we'll catch up again as to what all I'm talking about, to what degree it worked out or otherwise. And I'll probably refresh looking at the learnings that we pick up during the first 6 months of 2021.
And we did a lot of that ongoing this year too, with our COVID surveys and our pandemic surveys or pulse surveys, and then we send out our predictions forecast at the end. So, it was good for us to work together, just kind of see what you're finding in comparison to what we find. And there are, the most of it is that there are a lot of similarities in the underlying trends. And so it's reassuring to see from a technology consulting perspective, where you fit within the strategy and the process and the technology of what we're finding. And, you mentioned a couple of times it's really important to assess how these new modes of methodologies and approaches connect with the person and the organization, because that's what's going to really help gain the buy-in and to be able to sell it to your employees, but also to the leaders to want to invest in these types of solutions, is the impact. And and this is much more than just a numbers as far as what's the bottom line, which is very important, but it's also about the people and how you are able to retain your people and engage and create that experience and that culture where they want to stay and help the company thrive. So I think that's a really important piece that you mentioned. And another point too, today is a great example. I'm in Florida in the US, and it's 8:30 or almost 9 a.m. my time, and you're in the evening in India, and we're able to see each other, hear each other, and produce this type of podcast to share with our community. So this is, an example of how the new world is moving to, and, I feel like we're in the same room together. I don't feel that.
Absolutely.
I don't feel like we have this big geography that's separating us, which is pretty cool.
Absolutely. And it's the way of things tomorrow, right? We've already embraced the new normal. It isn't, I think we've stopped using that word now, correct?
Yeah.
We're saying that how do we make most of what we have ahead of us? That's what I think I like about, I think it's true anywhere in the world. And of course, I come from India. We are, of course, very, very optimistic country, right? And we believe that there's so much more that can be done. And every change which is so disruptive eventually leads to something better. That's how I look at it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you, Asha, and thank you so much for sharing. And for those of you that are listening or watching, Asha's ebook will be available through our blog. You can find our blog for the podcast either on our main website, where you could go to www.brandonhall.com/HCMx Radio / And those of you that are members to Brandon Hall Group's research membership, you can also find the blog and the recording and a link to her ebook within the context of the blog in our membership site. So you'll be able to either access our recording for the podcast, or video through our main website and also our membership. And if you also would like to reach Asha, how can they contact you? Where else can they find you?
My email ID, so it's apandey@didesign.net, and the ebook, of course, carries my contact details as in my individual capacity, and of course my organization as well.
Fantastic. Well, thank you, Asha. It's been a pleasure, and it was really great to share your story and to cover some of the trends in your ebook and share to our listeners. And thank you, everyone, for either signing on, listening, watching, whatever format works for you. We are just very grateful to have you part of our community, and we wish everyone well going into 2021. We're excited to see what the new year brings us all. Hopefully very good and well wishes and health and prosperity to everyone.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. It was a pleasure, Rachel. Take care, and to a wonderful year ahead.
Thank you. Take care, everyone.